session, which has been scheduled for today, Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, for the purpose of discussing School Board Policy BG, which is School Board Policies and Policy Process, and School Board Policy KCE, Ethics and Lobbying Policy. The public will not have an opportunity to participate in this work session to provide public comment because this is not a regular scheduled school board meeting. No action will be taken, and there'll be no public comment period in which the public would normally address the board. Well, we don't exactly have a full house, but for those of you who have joined us, thank you and welcome. As a reminder, board members won't be engaging in outside electronics. We have nearly a full board. I believe Member Salamanca will be attending us, so we will mark her as present when she arrives. And now we'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And now for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The loud voice is coming from this way this time, yes.
All right, Dr. Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This afternoon, we will be reviewing two policies. Policy BG, School Board Policies and Policy Process, and School Board Policy KCE, Ethics and Lobbying Policy. Our own General Counsel, Mr. Palmerini, will be leading us through the revisions. Mr. Palmerini?
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, members of the board. First, we're going to start with Policy BG. That is your School Board Policies and Policy Process. As you all will remember, when discussing policies to be brought, there was a couple things that we had discussed previously in planning sessions and or work sessions. One was to streamline the policy process to the extent we possibly could. And two, if a board member had a proposed revision to a policy, that we would certainly bring that forward at the request of the board. So that is why we are here today. First, let's start with Policy BG, the School Board Policy and Policy Process. The first change you will see at the number 1A, it says the notice of public hearing shall be advertised, and it said at least 21 days. That's not what the law is. It's actually 28 days, so we are making the change to ensure it is legally accurate. And then scrolling down here to Section 3, it was the title of it was Technical Changes to Policies, but everywhere that we refer to it, it was Technical Corrections. So we're just changing you all to adopt the change. And that's it for the changes on this one, and I'm able to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from board members? Let me start with Member Kester-Denel, then Vice Chair, then Member Felder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for, I appreciate your attempt to reduce the number of unnecessary meetings. I have a question about the types of changes and if they are substantive changes, even if they're changes in the law that we have to implement. What is the process for that?
So I think, and it's my reading of the law, that if it is a change to conform with the law, it's a technical change only. So what I envision bringing to you is our policy says you can do something, but you don't have to. And if a statute changes, it says, no, you shall do something, that I bring that change to you. If it's going to be more extensive than just the change in the law, that's going to have to go through the normal policy process. If it's going to do different things that are discretionary on the board's part, maybe I'm not explaining it as well as I could be, but if it's just to conform the policy to the law, that's a technical change. So I'm not going to bring it through the entire process. If it's doing something beyond just conforming the policy to the law, if it's doing something that the board has authority to do under the statute, but the current policy doesn't call for it, it's going to go through the entire process.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. That is where it says the superintendent or designee shall place a resolution on the consent agenda. I feel like that is not enough notice for the board for a change. Is there a way we could state, instead of just putting a resolution on the agenda, the consent agenda, that there is another step involved that you would have notified or had those conversations with board members, just so that if there is a question, or if a board member believes that it's not merely a technical change, that we will be able to catch that before it's gone through that whole process?
So, yeah, obviously, I'm at the will of the board with respect to its policy process. Having said that, just so you all know this, but for the members of the public who may be listening, we have to advertise an agenda 7 days before. So the actual change itself would have to be to you all 7 days before the meeting in order to be on the agenda for the consent agenda. So you all would have 7 days notice before that. If the board desires, what I can do is when there is a change, I can, notify you all by email, hey, here is the proposed change that we're making. If anybody has any questions with regard to that, please feel free to contact me, and then we can have that discussion. And if coming out of that discussion, there's a feeling that this is not just a technical change, but there's something more substantive there, then, I tell the board, hey, at least one of the members thinks this is something that needs a work session for further discussion. If that's the board's desire, I have no problem doing that.
That satisfies my question. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Member Castor-Dowdell, and I do think that's a good point. Vice Chair Gallo.
Madam Chair, I share some of the same concerns that Member Castor-Dowdell just discussed. The issue with the changes that come down from Tallahassee, so like, for example, there's been several laws over the last few years that have resulted in changes to our policy per statute, which we had to change. Some of them gave us the authority on the processes that got put in place. Some of them, however, didn't. And some of the laws that were passed, the board and our wonderful general counsel is not always in alignment on our interpretation of that law. So I'm slightly concerned with making this on the consent agenda. I would feel better if it was on the non-consent agenda, where we wouldn't have to, because we'll be pulling it off constantly. If it was on non-consent, then it would give people, well, the people could come and talk to it if it's on the consent, but it would give us an opportunity to discuss it, to ask some questions without pulling it off the consent agenda. And then, if we choose to, if we choose not to, then we obviously just approve that one non-consent item. But I feel like that would be a better avenue initially to take as we kind of work through this. And it would still eliminate the work sessions, but still give us the opportunity to discuss.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. Member Felder?
Okay, thank you. I guess this is the problem sometimes coming later. Don't speak first, because a lot of what Member Castellanos brought out and Member Gallo, some of the same concerns that I have, because we have had some policies that come from, statutes come from Tallahassee, and we had to make some adjustments, and sometimes the audience, where our constituents don't really understand, and they think that we have the power to change, and when it's a statute or law, we have to adjust our policies to fit inside. But I think I'm of the volition of Member Gallo that maybe we can move it so that there can be some discussions, because I know, as you recall, during this past year, the past 2 years, we've had some lot of discussion and issues where our constituents did not understand why we were making the policies or adjusting the policies like we were doing. And I think if we're going to have a board, then we need to be able to execute some power in terms of what we are divvying out to the public as to what we're doing as we govern this wonderful district. So the two of them have said basically what my feelings, but I just wanted to let you know that I was in agreement with both of them and that we do need to do that. But thank you so much.
It's nice to have this red light. You still have to press it pretty hard multiple times, but it's nice to know when it's on. I agree with the direction. I think your suggestion that you had let us know would work fine too, but pulling it off has the benefit of making it a little easier rather than wanting us pulling it off if somebody feels like they want to comment. And that's happened plenty of times where we know what we have to do, but we want to make it very apparent where it's coming from. So I like the language that you put because that's always what we end up wanting to do. And I just do want to remind the board that Mr. Palmerini's brought this to our attention several times, and the idea of doing this. So, and I think that when you brought it forward, nobody had an issue. So nobody has an issue with this. It's just whether it would be more appropriate on the non-consent agenda. And so I agree. Unless we have any objection, let's do that. And let the record show that member Salamanca has joined us.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Nona, sure.
Superintendent, you're recognized.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Palmerini.
One more thing. I also promised I'd bring this up for you all just to be aware of, and I'm not proposing the change or any change at this point. But coming out of the legislative session last time was the deregulation bill. I think it's Senate Bill 7002. And one of the changes it made was with respect to school board policy process. I want to read it to you. It says the district school superintendent shall exercise the following powers. This is in 1001.51. Approve operational policies through the delegated authority of the district school board. That the superintendent has the power to establish the process for the review and approval of district-wide policies and procedures through the formal delegated authority of the district school board pertaining to the district school system as the district school superintendent may consider necessary for its more efficient operation. Now, I read that and I'm like, I'm not really sure what that means. So I called our good friends Andrea Messina from the Florida School Boards Association and Brian Moore from the Florida Association of District School Superintendents. They have both spoken to you all on various occasions. So what this was intended to do was to mirror the process that the Florida Department of Education has. So what the Florida Department of Education does is that when they go through and change a policy, they will do a rule development workshop. And instead of the State Board of Education sitting there and hearing that the rule development workshop, that power is delegated to the Commissioner of Education. So the Commissioner of Education would attend the rule development workshop, staff would be there to answer questions, and then once that rule development workshop comes, then the final policy gets presented to the State Board of Education and they vote on it. So the State Board of Education doesn't sit really in any part of the policy process until the final adoption of a change in policy. So what both Andrea and Brian said coming out of that legislative session is it was meant to do the same thing for district school boards, meaning give the whole essential policy process to the superintendent up to and including final approval. There's pros and cons with it. Number one, obviously you all wouldn't be sitting through the entire process. That could be considered a pro because it does can free up some of your time. It could also be considered a con because at that point, if the superintendent were to develop a policy and you all weren't in agreement with it, you come to a final adoption, then you would say, no, we're not approving this as it's written. This needs to go back through the process. So it may be that the board would want to retain the authority to take the policy through the entire process like that. But I felt it necessary, given the legislative change, to inform you of it and to see if you all had any desire to do it. I mean, obviously, I don't need that call here today, but I just wanted to put it on your radar as a discussion point for you all to see whether or not you're interested in that.
Thank you, Mr. Palmerini. Superintendent, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments relate to, I'm not quite sure the request to change it, but it sounds like the process that was in place before, that going through the workshop session, is going to meet their needs. And so my recommendation is that that just not be included in the revision.
Member Byrd?
Is there anywhere else in here that talks about the just technical changes in the
Yeah,
procedure?
it's in Section 3.
Can you scroll down on
Yes,
that?
I can.
Thank you. Okay, so it's just describing, okay, should it be deemed technical changes? Okay, so technical changes are handled currently with just the resolution. We don't bring those necessarily to the board
No, those come to the board. It's on your consent agenda.
on the consent agenda. Okay. So can you scroll back now?
Yes, ma'am.
Could we not just say, because I think I understand why you're doing this, because there's been situations where it has just been technical pretty much, but changes in the law, and then we have to go through that whole process. So is it possible, and I don't even know if it's necessary since you have the technical one already in there, but could we just say, in the event that, hold on, where did I write this? Technical changes. In the event that law enacted subsequent to the adoption. Okay, wait. Can we just add that this is just for technical changes to the laws as opposed to any change? Because it says changes to policies to align with changes in the law shall be considered. Okay, well, you already have that in there. Okay, well then so I think the difficult part is because it's saying changes to policies to align with changes to the law are considered technical changes, but they're not always, is what the board members are saying. So maybe instead it should say technical changes to policies that align to law shall be considered technical changes and handled, however the other technical changes are handled. In other words, if it's more substantial change, then it comes before the board. Maybe if there's some kind of differentiation there, that might make it better for the board members. And also, instead of it just saying the superintendent or designee shall place a resolution on the consent agenda, it could say after consultation with board members, the superintendent places it on consent agenda.
Well, I think what we wanted to do is just pull it off and make it non-consent. And that way, we wouldn't have to have the consultation. We could, but it's a lot more obvious to us when we're looking at the agenda when it's not on the consent agenda where there's 50, 60 items to look at. So that was the reason for thinking that we take that approach.
Yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
that. I was just thinking if it's a more technical change that, do we even need to have the conversation about it? But
No,
I
and
understand.
and that's a separate issue, and I hear what you're saying, that some of their changes are technical, a lot of them are substantive.
Yeah.
And I think what Mr. Palmerini was doing in this language where it says that changes to the law shall be considered technical corrections as defined in the policy. So as defined means you go back and you look at what technical means, but the average person isn't going to do that. So I hear what you're saying. So the idea that we have language in there that would suggest that something that's monumental is treated as technical. I do understand, I mean, the goal here was to reduce when we have to do something, to make it a little quicker to get it done, because we have to do it. And I think the concern of board members is, again, we might have to do something that really is troublesome, and we want to be able to make that clear. So suggestions for how we might modify this language so that nobody reads it and thinks that we believe that a monumental change is technical.
I'm thinking it through.
What if we change on the previous section where we call it technical? What if instead of calling that technical changes, we include it as technical changes and those mandated by state law? Can we change can we change the title of the technical, of the other part of the policy?
Sure.
Okay, so you follow what we would do? Instead of calling it just technical, we would describe it as both. And then when we write it here, we would be talking about the mandatory changes rather than having to just use the term technical. Works better? Okay. Member Kester-Dennell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about just technical changes to our policies in general. Are you recommending this process only for ones that are mandated by Florida statute, the changes, or are these also include any technical changes to any policies we have now that we would not go through that whole work session process?
This is for any change in either state law or federal law that comes down that it conflicts with a policy that we currently have. So I mean it to cover the whole field there. So state law, state regulation, federal regulation.
Okay, when you say conflicts, technical changes to me don't always seem like they are necessarily conflicting. It may be like a change of 21 days to 28 days. But if it conflicts, I would think that we would need some kind of more in-depth work session, discussion process, where it would be, like if it was going to overturn one of our policies. We're talking about a conflict. I would think that that's not just technical, not like we're just saying it conflicts, this is the law, we have to get rid of this policy. Are you considering that to be technical?
I am, yes. So with the way I wrote it, yes, because you have no choice but to implement it. I understand why you guys feel like that is something that you would need a more extensive process to discuss, because you do need to explain to the public, your constituents, that I'll just take a law, for example, the law dealing with pronouns and personal titles. Just to, that was not something that many or most of the board approved with, but it was one of those things that the law required us to do. So that I would have considered that a technical change in order to change our policies to conform to it. Now, if the board wants to take it through the entire process, when we have those situations, it's your policy process, and I was trying to be reflective of your needs, and if your needs are, let's take it through the entire process, we can do that. But what I also heard from you all too was we've had a lot of meetings on policies, some of which have been not necessarily what we wanted to do. So I was trying to give a way to lessen the load. But I'm at the board's discretion, whichever way that you all want to go with it. If you think the more extensive process is beneficial so you can explain it to not only the public, your constituents, then I'm at your pleasure there. But that's why I'm bringing it to you all to get your comments.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Can I continue real quick?
Go ahead.
So when it is a technical change that negates our whole policy, I would consider that to be substantive, even if it is just to comply with the technical aspects of a new law or statute. And I would hope that that would come to the board and also in a work session or workshop so that the public can also weigh in and understand what's happening. I want to make sure that we're still transparent about our policies and the process. But I have no problem with a true technical change that isn't going to overturn our policies that we've had or really change the substance or the way we operate. I think those need a more full public vetting, even if in the end we end up complying with the language, but it's not always clear from the beginning. Sometimes we're able to wordsmith it so that we can find a happy medium that doesn't violate the law, but also doesn't violate our general policies and wishes. So I think that there is a medium, a middle ground somewhere, just so that we're not merely abiding by the state when they could be overreaching, or if there are big changes by the state that the public is not really aware of it because we didn't really go through a larger public process.
So a couple things there. One, now I have to point out what the state laws are with respect to that. You all have to presume any state law is constitutional and you don't have the authority to challenge it. So that becomes, whether we think the state is overreaching or not, we're going to have to comply unless and until a court says it's unconstitutional. But I understand that. I'm trying to think of a way to do this to see how it meets your needs. I suggested, getting the proposed change to you all prior to us doing this. I could also get the change to you all and say, do you all think this is one that needs to go through I can send it to you by email, and then let's say at a board meeting tonight, for example, if I sent you an email, I could go in my attorney report and say, hey, I've sent you a proposed revision that I think may be technical. Do you all agree with that? And if you say, yeah, we think it's technical, the board reaches the consensus there, then we can put it on non-consent, as you all have said, and we can go through with it. If you all say, no, that's really more substantive and I think we want to have a discussion on it, then I can set it for a work session, then a rule development workshop, and go through the entire process. Would that be a process that works for you all?
We already, as it is right now, we already have that opportunity for you, and we have the opportunity for the board to weigh in on policies. So I was kind of going down the same path, that the window of opportunity is there for us as long as we know ahead of time that we're going to be discussing that. And then we get to provide that direction.
Clarification, when I said the state overreach, I did not mean that we would not be following the laws or upholding the Constitution. I just meant there are legal interpretations that sometimes can be had.
Oh, no. That's just me being overly cautious, and I wasn't presuming that. However,
I'm just clarifying.
I got you.
I understand, Member Castrodental. I definitely understand, because we never know who's watching, which is the why. Well, we know who's watching, but it's important whoever's watching understands, to everyone who's watching. Thank you. Member Salamanca, then Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, John, so thank you for bringing this one up, because I do think that we've had several policies where we're changing one word, striking entire paragraphs that are just replaced. And so in the context of where the public usually wants to weigh in, those are technically usually not the ones that they want to weigh in. And so I am supportive of streamlining those technical changes as defined as what we have. I share with my board members that giving it to non-consent so folks can speak to it is important. And as Member Castellanos said, I think the only times when a technicality could potentially be something that the board wants to discuss is when that technicality really contradicts or radically alters the way we do things. Because I think then we need to usually consider what the implementation of such a policy looks like, and that's when we have a fairly productive conversation about that, and that's when the public also wants to have a conversation around it. The law changes. We know that is, and then we also know that we have to follow that law. And the area where we as a school board and how we work with the superintendent is in the implementation of some of that. And it is our job to kind of make sure that we implement this in a way that impacts our communities, families, and parents in the way that we hear about it. And so whatever that could be, like you said, if it is a radical change that really is the opposite or close to the opposite of what we currently have, I think that's when we would need a heads up and probably potentially opt out rather of having this. So I would just have the language for the exception of. I think some technicalities do actually have second order effects where it impacts implementation and policy in a different way. So I think those are the ones that we would still want to see as a board. And I share that concern.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. I agree with everything that's been said, and I think that we're going to have the guardrails in place so that the board will feel comfortable moving forward. I just wanted, for clarification's sake, understand it in my own mind. So, for example, if there is a brand new policy, that would come through the board to be workshopped.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is, like, with when the Baker Act law got passed, it was a new process. It came before the board, and the board actually went above and beyond the law, because while we can't, same thing with the cell phone policy. So while we can't do less than what the law requires, we can do more than what the law requires, and you've seen us do that in a couple instances. So I just want to make sure that we're flushing that through and hashing that out. And then if there's something on the non-consent and a board member says, you know what, I just think that this deserves more conversation, it can then be pulled off non-consent and go through the regular process, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Now that everybody agrees, I have a feeling I might not agree. I thought, after listening to all this, I really thought the best time to bring this up is at the end of the meeting when we discuss policies. The only concern I have, so this board can spend a lot of time thinking through and debating things, and that's not a criticism, Member Byrd. If you've ever served on a board where nobody says anything, exactly, or women. Yeah, no, seriously, and that is a good thing. I'm just, the only concern that I have is at the end of our meeting, we might end up having essentially a work session over whether or not to have a work session. That's okay. It's at the end of the meeting and you are not going to be here. Hence, I don't want to say you don't count, but you don't count. She's okay with us being tortured when we're tired at the end of the meeting. And you know what? Ideally, I wish that we just could have the flexibility, but I don't see how we can do it. And if we decide that approach, in order to eliminate a work session that just doesn't seem necessary, ends up costing us more time debating whether or not to have it and actually adds to the process, we'll have to come back through and change it. And I think that's our only choice, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Just wanted to throw that out there. Just a prediction. Member Farran.
Thank you. I just wanted to chime in and say I agree that I do think it it's okay for like the technical. One question I had is with the technical changes, I'm thinking back to when we were implementing the no cell phone policy, and then we wanted to add in there we were talking about it could be in their backpack, and then it was like purse, then the watches, and but then that's not a technical change
No.
because it doesn't pertain to the law. Is that correct?
That's correct. That would have been a substantive change of the places where you could or could not keep the cell phone. That wouldn't have been driven by the law at all, because the law says that that they have to be off during class, where you all went above and beyond that. That says they have to be off all day, bell to bell. That's different. That is a policy choice that you all have the discretion to engage in. You all utilize that discretion, but if there was going to be changes of you can only keep it in your backpack or you can keep it in your pocket, or the debate that you all had, that was clearly substantive, that would have had to run through the entire process.
Okay. And then by doing this is only for certain occasions and not for every policy, correct? I mean, I'm just clarifying what last time.
This is not going to be the normal way we do policy making. The normal way we're going to do policy making is the way we have been doing it in the past. Now, there may be less in the way of policies that come before you all based upon, the things that I've talked about previously. If it's a board member request, if the superintendent says it doesn't match what our current practice is, or if there's a change in law. But for most of, I would say the vast majority of your policy making, it's still going to run through the normal process. This was just trying to take technical things, changes in law that you have to follow, off of your plate going through 2 extra meetings to get to the 3rd meeting.
That makes sense. And then are we able to, I know you said we would receive the new revised policy 7 days prior to the meeting. I do like having it in non-consent, just so we don't have to, I think that would work better. But is there a way for us just to be maybe given a heads up, like, hey, we are going to be working on this policy and doing a technical change because of the law, and we'll let you know when we get that done, something like that?
So my intent is either in my attorney report at the board meetings or via email to you all, if it doesn't fall in that area, to say, hey, we think that this law has changed. We're going to do a technical change. My intent is to get you the actual language of the technical change before it even gets advertised. So that way, you all have not hesitated to email and say, hey, I have an issue with this, or I have an issue with that. And I can judge there and say, okay, there's some board members at least have a desire to see this thing go through the entire process and take it out of, the technical change area and just say, okay, we're going to have a work session and do it the normal way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Member Front. Member Byrd.
I'm going to bring us back to what the superintendent said about 10 minutes ago. It sounds like this is exactly what we are already doing for technical changes as what we had before. So I'm kind of agreeing with the superintendent. I'm not sure why we even need this extra language now that we've discussed it and we've hashed it out, that we're uncomfortable with laws, with changes to policy automatically being put on the agenda, either consent or non-consent. It seems like we're already doing, if it's a technical change, it's a technical change. We don't need to bring it through the process. If it's anything more than a technical change, then it needs to go through the process. So I'm just rehashing what the superintendent said about 10 minutes ago, that maybe we just take the whole thing out and forget about it and do it the way we have been doing. Except obviously if it's just a technical change, we're not going to bring it through the process. Right? Isn't that what we're saying through all this anyway? Basically.
I think that's what you all were saying in the discussion that I'm getting here. I was looking at it more from the standpoint, and I'm just being completely transparent with you. If the law changes, we got to do it. So to me, if we have a policy that conflicts with the law, and I thank Vice Chair Gallo for pointing out that sometimes that you all disagree with me. I appreciate that, but but if it's just a straight change to comply with the law, I was considering that a technical change. But I'm telling you, if this board is not comfortable with that and wants to go through the entire process, this is your policy process, and I'm at your disposal on that. So if you all think that let's just keep it the way it is, and that's the way you want to do it, if that's the consensus of the board, I'm fine with that too. I was trying to ease the burden of meetings on you all, but this is your process, not mine.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought. I think we just need to make a decision. Staying the way it is, I think, eliminates all the discussion we just had over making sure that we know ahead of time, and eliminates the dual, possibly having a work session at the end of the meeting to discuss whether to have a work session. The one advantage that I see potentially is sometimes the public comes and really doesn't understand that what we're doing is what we have to do, and they're still mad at us for doing it, and they still want us to do what we can't do. And so adding to the number of times that people show up and want us to break the law and defy the Constitution has advantages. So from that standpoint, that would be the one plus, I think, to having the ability to streamline the process, because it's essentially administrative. It is administrative. It really makes little sense that we have to vote on it at all. And I hate when I'm in that situation. And just, you have to own something that you're not responsible for. So that would be, I think, I'm so close on swaying back and forth. I think that's why I would sway towards, we put it on non-consent. John lets us know ahead of time. Everybody has an opportunity to look over it. And at the end of the meeting, he reminds everybody this is where we are. And then anybody who has a problem can make their argument. That's kind of, but that's me. So let's figure out where everybody else is. And this is not a sword I'm going to die on. So, Member Salamanca.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm understanding right, but my understanding is if we keep things the way it is, we still will have some meetings where we're just doing commas and editing. And I do not want to have pure technical meetings. I only want to have a meeting and a say when the technicality is bumping up against in a way that is contradictory to what we are actually editing. And so if we have something that says everyone can use their cell phone every day, all day in school, and the state says you can no longer use your cell phones, it could look like a technicality in some implementation, or we're just putting a statute, but it contradicts so significantly that I want to say. That being said, if the state changed the definition for something, or we're changing the comma because the statute changed the commas, that's the kind of meetings that I don't think are very productive. We still currently have to have all these meetings leading up to it. So I think we still need to change it in a way that is specific, like we define what kind of technicality is important for us to discuss versus not. I think that's the only edit I would like to make, but I don't want to keep our status quo.
I think the problem that the board at the beginning of the meeting expressed was that Mr. Palmerini's interpretation of what is technical, and each of us might not be the same. So to figure out how to define that, we'll have to spend some time on, but we can use language that, that's kind of what we were talking about by saying he's going to tell us it's a technical change, the law requires it. And if any of us have a really strong feeling that it's not a technical change, then we can ask to have it go through the normal process. But, in the 21 days versus 28, we're saying 21, it's 28. Or it's the other way around. We're saying 28, and they're saying you can do it in 21. Okay, well, we have to make that change. Does anybody really care? No. And we can just move that along. that just, I think, just keeps the board still ultimately in the driver's seat to determine what is and isn't technical. And it gives us a flexibility. Anybody disagree with that approach strongly enough to die on this sword? Okay. Okay. We'll see how it goes next round.
I think I've got it.
Okay.
I think I understand. What I'm going to put in there is that I will get the proposed policy revisions to you all in advance of the meeting. I will ask the board prior to any adoption process going through on the consent or non-consent, or on the non-consent agenda, do you all think this is technical and we can just do it in one meeting, or do you think it's substantive and requires us to go through the whole process? The board will give its consensus, and then on either way, and then we will go from there.
Okay, and this is going to come back to us 2 more times.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Absolutely, Member Castrodental.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
What?
I'm trying to get back to my thought.
Okay.
Technical changes can also be substantive. So I think when you're saying technical, I think we do need that definition. Is it editorial? Is it editorial? Is it a mere misspelling, or is it,
So
Right.
if you look at policy section 3A, I guess I should scroll there, yes. So you see it there, technical corrections may include considerations of sections, transfer of sections, combining or dividing sections, renumbering sections, subsections, sections, chapters, or titles, correcting or additions for grammatical or typographical errors, or alteration or omission not affecting the construction or meaning of those sections, subsections, titles, chapters, titles, or policies as a whole.
right? So those all conform to my understanding of technical change. And when you talk about a new statute changing, I think that's a higher level of technical change that does need to go through a process of just maybe being on the non-consent, just so that we are, because I learn more through a little discussion. There have been many times when I've reviewed language that's been sent to me, and through an email, and I'm preparing for the meeting, when I didn't catch something, or when someone else says something, I'm like, oh, they're right. I saw it before, but I didn't think about that. So I think there is value in that non-consent aspect, but I agree that there is also value in not holding lengthy meetings that are not necessary because of those lower level technical changes. So my 2 cents.
All right, which is the direction we're going. I have, now that you brought us back to this, and I echo your point that there are times when I think I'm crystally clear, and then after hearing the board discussion, I might be certain of the direction I'm going, and that is the value, I think, of groupthink and the fact that we're all here doing this. So now I'm looking at this, and I'm struggling a little bit with, we've defined technical changes, and later on we say that legislative mandated changes are technical changes as defined here, but this doesn't define it. So I am from a, not procedural, but from a technical standpoint, should the technical changes also reference the legislative mandated changes? Since
I could put language in there that says, and legislative changes as defined hereafter in the policy.
okay, yeah, so now we have a nice do loop, which are normally bad, but in this case I think would be good. Anybody old enough to know what a do loop is? Okay. How about a carriage return? Anybody know what a carriage? There we go. I got one for carriage return. Superintendent's not willing to admit it, but she's quiet. No, she's nodding her head, but yes. Okay, I think we're ready to move. He does.
No, I absolutely
on
understand.
the
Yes,
do
thank
loop?
you.
No, he's not old enough to know what a do loop is or a
I know, but
carriage
I've heard the
return.
story from you. So I do know what a do loop is.
Oh. You told him what a do loop is? Didn't think you were old enough.
I
Oh,
know.
okay. No, my story to you was about carriage return.
Oh, no, it was due. It was
Okay,
due
maybe I
to-
didn't tell you carriage return. You shouldn't have brought it up. Another story.
All right, so my plan is I'm going to synthesize all of this. I'm going to, like I did with FF, send it back to you saying, this is my understanding coming out of it. If anybody has any issues, as Member Byrd helpfully did with FF for me earlier today, she remembered something I've forgotten, so please chime in. And then once I get that, I'll recirculate it to you all just to make sure everybody's on the same page going forward.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Anything else on this policy? Okay. All right, we will move on then, Superintendent, to ethics and lobbying policy. Now you can announce.
Our General Counsel, Mr. Palmerini, will also be presenting on this policy, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Superintendent, members of the board. On May 14th, you all had a discussion at the end of your meeting about bringing back a policy. Vice Chair Gallo brought up an issue with respect to product testimonials and whether or not we allowed them and in what circumstances. So she wanted to have this brought up for a work session. We have now gotten to it. This arises out of, we had a situation with one of our vendors who, while being a vendor for us, was also providing us free services as well, and whether or not product testimonials could be given for the free services. So what we are seeing here as proposed changes is whether or not to give a product testimonial in cases where we're getting free services from a vendor. So the first provision is absent the explicitly contracted authority to solicit or use testimonials, i.e. you put in your contract that as part of the services that we're being provided, the vendor requests, hey, can we get testimonials? And if we contract to do that, that would be permissible. But it says, no vendor shall use the testimonial of an OCPS employee without the written consent of the ethics compliance officer. And we added in, or the superintendent, because that frankly complies with the practice that we've had previously. Vivian Kokotis, our ethics compliance officer, will say, I approve of this or I don't approve of this, but the superintendent also has the final call on that. So we are adding in language to conform to the practice. And it says this restriction includes testimonials in any form, including written, oral, or electronic, and in any forum, including but not limited to websites or emails. And then you skip down to number 3. It says an OCPS employee may provide testimonials for any vendor who is a charitable foundation organized under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, which provides the district complimentary goods or services, and the following criteria will be utilized for such testimonials. And with respect to the vendor where we had the situation before, we utilized these criteria in determining whether or not to allow the testimonial. So the OCPF staff member's decision to participate in and to provide a testimonial is entirely voluntary. OCPS will not be identified by name in the testimonial. No individual OCPS school will be identified by name or likeness. No filming will take place on OCPS property. No use of OCPS or district logos or individual school logos. OCPS staff members who provide testimonials will be identified by first name, position, and type of school. You see the example there, Susan, interventionalist, elementary school. No quantitative data will be included in any testimonial unless the data is approved by the district's research management and strategy director. And the vendor shall submit the testimonial secured from OCPS staff to the superintendent or designee for review prior to use or publication in any form. Such review shall be limited to ensuring compliance with the requirements listed above. So, a couple things there. The data thing was, there was representations with respect to, performance from the vendor and what kind of improved performance we had with respect to student achievement. And that may or may that we didn't see that matched the data that we had from our folks. We had people being identified by full name, principal, and they would say I believe they said the elementary school name, but I can't quite remember that far back because it's been a while since I looked at it. We don't want the filming on OCPS property. Obviously, there's security issues about, filming property, showing where various things is. You can catch the location of, if we have cameras located somewhere in there. That's the reasoning behind that. But basically, we want to allow our employees to do it under this proposal, but not in a way that, it implies that we are, I guess the easiest way to explain this is if we get into a procurement situation in the future with that vendor or another vendor on the same exact service, if we have employees giving testimonials unabashedly or without reservation, other competing vendors may think that they don't have a chance because our OCPS employees are giving the testimonials. That's the reasoning behind it. But we think with these restrictions in place, that eliminates that issue, because especially since we are limiting it to the free services that we are getting. I mean, who can object to us giving testimonials about free services that we are getting from a vendor who's also a charitable organization? So those are the criteria that we've come up with, and I am here to answer any questions that you have.
I have a quick one, and then we'll move on to Member Castrodental. But when we say any employee, is it clear that that does not include board members?
My position on employees is that board members are not employees of the district. So that's always been my position. I think that's been the understanding of you all on that board. But I can put an exclusion for board members.
No, I just wanted, and I can argue both from the standpoint of board members' rights to support a charitable organization. But when you talk about the potential of coming back in to bid on something, that board member has essentially removed themselves from the process. So I don't know what the answer is there, but I just wanted clarity on what this is supposed to mean. Is it a technical change or?
Too soon.
Change.
Too soon.
I'm sorry. Member Castrodental. Member Castrodental.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this delineation of what we can and cannot do. I have a question about any type of remuneration or free goods and services that are given to a teacher in exchange for a testimonial.
So this is not so much the ethics policy, but it's the state administrative code rules with respect to the principles of professional conduct. Those of you who were teachers know what that is. Obviously, it's that rule states that teachers shall accept no gift that essentially would affect their decision-making with respect to a student. That, to me, is the standard by which that's governed. They are also not a what we call a RIPE, a reporting individual or a procurement official that this policy, KCE, covers because they don't have the spending authority under the policy. You're supposed to comply with the gift law with respect to that, and it's an appearance of impropriety standard. If you get $100 in gift cards, $500 in gift cards, and all of a sudden you get that from a parent, and that kid has had C's all up until now, and now all of a sudden that kid has A's, that could be problematic, and that could lead to potential professional sanctions from either the district or the State Board of Education for violation of the principles.
I'm sorry, that was not clear to me. I don't know. So there are restrictions, we're just not putting it in this part of
No, this is just the testimonial part of it is, hey, you've provided us a free service, teacher, you've utilized free service, we're asking you to do a testimonial video saying, hey, we've utilized your free service, it's been great, it helped with my kids, et cetera, et cetera. If we want to put in language in there that says no employee shall receive remuneration, I have no problem with that, if that's what the board desires.
Okay, so my, I guess to kind of tease this out, a vendor could be a charitable foundation, but that doesn't always mean that they are providing services for free,
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
So, So are we saying that they can provide, an employee can provide a testimonial only if the services are free or from a foundation, or not like Scholastic?
This policy is meant to only cover the instances in where we get complimentary goods or services. If it's services that we're paying for, it is not meant to be covered by this revision.
Okay. I don't know if I have finalized my thought on that, but thank you for the information.
All right, thank you, Member Castellano. Member Gould.
So it seems like the problem we're solving for is vendors may be afraid to submit proposals if at the time a testimony is given, that's actually the best, most revolutionary thing on the market. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's particularly the problem we're attempting to solve for. Right now, we didn't typically allow testimonials at all.
Correct.
And the concern was, if we're getting free services, why wouldn't we want to tout the entity that's giving us free services? I think that's, from my perception, that's the problem that we are
Okay.
attempting to solve.
So, I agree with that. I'm not sure I agree with only it being free. And here's why. I think back to when we implemented Khan Academy. And there was no other option at that time that was like Khan Academy. And we were not the first to do it, but we were utilizing it, and it was helping our kids. And it actually would have helped us to have more testimonials out there to drive more kids to it. So I think there are times when we are piloting something or something extraordinary is happening, and I don't know how you put that in there. Whether it's free or not, it may be in the head of I saw Access today, my Access today, that use of a positive AI, there may be times where we want to promote, even to our own populations and to our fellow districts or the community, the benefits that our kids are getting from this. So I think the criteria is not just when it's free, but when there is something that is different from what we're doing, and there's not 100 of them doing it, that could come up with an RFP that we might want to allow employees. I think going through the process, and certainly the ethics compliance officer is that safeguard for that judgment piece. But I don't know that it's only when it's free. That's my thought on it.
All right, Member Byrd? Oh, I'm sorry. Superintendent?
So I just want us to be cautious. I think we are entering a very slippery slope because this opens us up to not just those products that we here at the board might be thinking about, but others that you may not be in support of. And I myself, as well as our staff, really believe that the policy as it is, or as we've had it, has helped us to really focus on education and not worry as much about who we are touting. We do get asked all the time about, let's say, Scholastic, and we do share our opinions about that. But when we are treading on this subject, especially when we're looking at vendors, it was one thing when we're looking at, nonprofits that were not charging us for services. But when we're talking about a vendor, I think we are opening ourselves up to be in a position that's going to cause us some problems down the road. And again, right now, you may be thinking of vendors that you agree with. But I know some of you here do not support, let's say, Prager curriculum. Using this policy, again, I'm not saying I'm for or against, I'm saying, but this opens you up to any vendor, any nonprofit that a teacher or an employee believes they can do a testimonial for. And I think it's difficult when we're saying this works, when we cannot, without a benefit of the doubt, point to the reason we had great scores or why we had a decline in something, especially if we haven't done a formal study to be able to say, yes, this is why this worked. So it's the board's policy. I'll support it. I just know that there's angst among staff, especially if you're going towards vendors.
All right, Member Byrd, you're recognized.
No, I completely agree with what the superintendent just said. My question is, it already says in this policy that an OCPS employee has to have written consent from the ethics compliance officer. And if they don't, then they're subject to disciplinary action. So if that's already in our policy, I'm not sure, or can you just help me understand why we need to add the other stuff? Because even if it's, unless we're just adding because we want to make sure charitable foundations are in there.
That was part of it. That was part of it. The other part was to give a list of parameters for the ethics compliance officer
Okay.
to work off of too. So it's not just the ethics compliance officer out there on it's her own, making the determinations what's best. It's here's the things that we want to ensure as part of our testimonials that is being done or is not being done, as the case may be.
Okay, so these parameters then apply to not only charitable, then any testimonial?
She would,
Is what you would like
she would
it to
utilize
say?
this for any testimonial consideration that she would make. But we were certainly, the factors we could go to any testimonial, but we also wanted to do, just be trying to, transparently with you guys, we were trying to solve an issue that we had with one particular vendor who was a vendor but was also providing us free services. And we wanted to allow that testimonial for the free services because the way we were reading the policy before, both myself and Vivian Kokotis, who's our ethics compliance officer, was, hey, they're a vendor. We can't do testimonials for them, not even for the free stuff. So that's what we were trying to solve.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to give some perspective, because I was the one that requested that this policy come before you all today, we did have a nonprofit who was providing free services to our model schools. There was testimonials that were done, and there was a different interpretation of the law that's in statute between our legal team and their legal team. There's two lawyers on that team, and when they read the statute, because they were nonprofit and the services that they were providing, that the testimonials were on, it wasn't on the stuff, the professional development side, it was just on the free services. Our interpretation was that we can't do testimonials, and there was really nothing else in our policy other than what was in statute. Their interpretation was that they are a nonprofit, they are a charitable organization, they did all this for free, and the testimonials for everybody who has been a part of a nonprofit know you live and die on your fundraising, right? And you have to have some data or testimonial to show that this product that you have that you're pushing for free actually works or people find value in it. And that's kind of the point to the testimonials. So I asked for this to be done because I thought there needed to be a clarification, because I could see, even though I'm not a lawyer, and I do not try to play one up here at the dais, that there could be misinterpretations on how you go. And I also came from a place of where we should be good partners. We need to be good partners. We need to support those that are in our schools that are trying to accomplish our mission of literacy, of achievement gaps, of mental health, whatever that looks like, whatever problem we're trying to solve. We can't solve it alone. We're too big. We need all agencies and stakeholders to come in, and it's going to take a village to fix these very, very big issues that we have in order to encourage people to be in our schools and to help us. We need to be good partners. And I've kind of felt like we're not always. We're getting better. The culture is changing. We're getting better. I understand that some staff may have trouble with how this is written, knowing that it goes through our ethics compliance officer and knowing who that is. I am very confident that this policy will not be abused. It will not be abused. It just gives parameters so not only the nonprofits that are in our school understand what the guidelines are and they're not interpreting a law, but it helps our ethics compliance officer also give parameters and they're not subjective. So I think that this is important for us to have. And I just don't think that there will be abuse of it. And I understand that some people on the board may like other concepts versus the other, but this isn't about the board. This is about something that happened in a school that principal or those teachers or someone within the district felt like it was a game changer, right? Like they were so helpful, and the benefits we saw from this program was so great that, yeah, I'm going to sit down and tell you a little bit about the difference it made in my classroom or the difference that it made in my school. I don't have to agree with it, but if it was a positive change and a big enough change for anybody to want to sit down and tell their story about it, I think it's worth telling. And even if it wasn't a product I liked, if it benefited our kids, whether I liked it or not, I would support it because it showed a change, a positive change in that school. And as board members, all we're trying to do every single day when we create policy is not create unintended consequences. So I understand some concerns, but create policies that allow our children to flourish and allows us to be innovative. Because if we don't innovate in the current environment we're in, if we don't bring people in and we're not a little bit more flexible than we have in the past, we're going to lose students. There's just too much going on, and we have to be able to compete in public schools like charter schools, like private schools, like others do, and this is just a piece of the puzzle. And so while I'm on my soapbox, I'm going to tell you, I would just like to rewrite this whole entire policy because this policy goes above and beyond what the state law requires, and I'd like to bring it back to where we're following the state law, and that's represented in this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Member Farrant.
Thank you. I am in agreement with Member Gallo. Really, the basis of this and why this was brought to light was from a nonprofit offering free services. They did offer vendor type services on the side, but the testimonial that was given was because they were a nonprofit offering free services. And what I don't understand is how our district continues to say that there is no data that supports the testimonials or that there is no data that supports the great work that they were doing. Because when I looked at the data that they showed me, it's from our OCPS, it supported the incredible work. I mean, we were seeing kids flourishing at these schools. And why would we not want to celebrate that? So to me, what I saw as a result was that we literally stifled an incredible partnership. We're burning bridges instead of uniting, and all over. Why? So we can be like, I don't know. I feel like we're I don't even know what the term is, but I feel like we're just being so nitpicky instead of trying to make sure that we are partnering. Let's be partners. Let's be good partners. We want people in the community to go, wow, Orange County Public Schools is an incredible partner. We want to partner with them. We're here to help children learn to read, learn to know their math, love math, and master whatever they're learning. And if we have a program or nonprofit that's coming in and offering free services and that is doing that above and beyond and so well, like Member Gallo said, that teachers and principals wanted to sit down and share with the community, like, look at what we're doing. Look at the huge changes with your kids. I'm in agreement. If this is over and above what the law is saying, I would be in favor of looking at what exactly the law states. And then I don't think we need to be, nitpicking every little thing. Because from my own experience and speaking with some teachers and principals, they actually now, because of all of this, they're like, I don't even want to say anything now. Oh my gosh. Like, I thought we were doing a good thing, but apparently I got my hand slapped. And so now I don't even want to share. I don't think we need to do that. I think we want to be supportive of our teachers, and we want to praise what the great work that they're doing. And if there's a nonprofit that's coming in, or even a vendor that's coming in, and we're seeing tremendous results, and they want to do a testimonial, I don't mind some of the stuff here where we want to keep it maybe a little more neutral, and we don't want to name a school. Maybe we don't want to name that they're the principal or whatnot. Some of those things, like if that's what you prefer, but I think making it so nitpicky that staff go, whoa, there's so many regulations, I don't even want to share it. Now we're stifling connections and partnerships.
All right, Superintendent, you're up next.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to the policy, but I'm also going to make reference. When we spoke to the teachers, they were not following the model, every single one of them. They were supplementing with other materials. And the study that we did not show a significant difference. It was a small group, which is why we offered to do more. And so I'm not going to speak to one particular vendor because they were a vendor. I'm going to speak to the policy. My comments are the way the policy is written, because it doesn't identify anyone from Orange County Public Schools. It doesn't identify Orange County Public Schools as an entity. And this is the way the board wants to go. I'm fine. I still stand by, we're on a slippery slope when we are saying that we are going to have testimonials. And in this particular example, district staff had concerns. And even in talking with other experts in the area of reading, there are concerns. Now, the professional development they were providing, the structure of the professional development was outstanding. But what exactly was being presented, the staff still doesn't agree with it. And staff at the school, not all, but teachers and some of the administrators even said they were supplementing with grade level materials.
All right. I'm going to ask that we try for the remainder of this discussion. I understand what got us here, but if we can focus on the policy for the remainder of this discussion, I think it would be fruitful, because I don't think that there's going to be a resolution on whether that product, I don't think further debating it is going to be helpful at this point. So it's just a request. Member Byrd?
Thank you. I am going to take a little different stance than some of my fellow board members, and that is just the concern that that the issue is that one particular teacher may feel like this product she used, or this, even if it's nonprofit or for profit, whatever, that this one particular product had such tremendous growth in her classroom and her kids did so good, but it may not be something that this school district supports. And not any particular thing here, but I'm just saying, what if it's something that the teacher, even a nonprofit, for free, because there's plenty of free products and nonprofits out there that push things that we probably definitely would not agree with. So we definitely don't want teachers just being able to provide testimonials for products without any oversight. So I think having this oversight in here is important. The other issue is that I really like that it says that that it has to go through quantitative data, especially needs to go through the research management and strategy director. You have to have, you can't say that you saw these raise this, increase in scores because of this one thing. If there are several different things that are being used, it's hard, you can't say that it's just that one product. So there's just so many problems with anyone just jumping on board with testimonials. So I am all in favor with having a process where it has to go through ethics and compliance and has to have data to support. You can't just say, I saw this strength from using this if there were many other things at play that could have also made those growths. So I don't have a problem with what's in the policy. Thank you.
Okay, just for absolute clarity, when you say you don't have a problem with what's in the policy, you're talking about including these revisions. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I and everybody understood. Member Salamanca, followed by Member Gould, then Member Felder.
I think this is a tough one, in that I understand our procurement process is trying to keep things very fair for our vendors. But I do find myself struggling, and it's not just with our nonprofit vendors, but just a lot of our vendor decisions that we might make. Sometimes we do hear from staff or teachers or parents about decisions that we make on a vendor that maybe we provide another option for data security for whatever reason, but they can't use that product for the same things anymore. And a lot of those concerns, I'm sure, maybe reach staff, but they don't usually reach us sometimes until after that decision or purchase was made. The example that comes to mind, and it's not a nonprofit, is Class Dojo. And we have a lot of reasons for why Class Dojo is not used, and I understand that, but there was certain things that teachers or parents use that for, that in alternative choices that we made in product, they can't use it for that same purpose. And there hasn't been a replacement. And so sometimes the only way I understand what's going on the ground from teachers or parents is when they tell me feedback about some of these products. And it's not unique to just this. And, at that point, we've already gone through the whole procurement process and whatnot. So I think this is less specific to this policy, but I do find myself frustrated sometimes when I hear that feedback on certain vendors or choices that we make that impact our parents or students. And it ends up being parents or teachers coming to me and sharing that with me. And there's very little I can do post-procurement process when it's something so, and there's usually a reason. It could be data, security, student safety, whatnot. So I don't know. I wish there was a way to get some of these testimonials, even if it's for and against, and have more visibility generally in the procurement process. I don't know if this is the place to put it, because it kind of, I feel like we're only going to hear one side of the story. So I don't know that this is the right policy for it, but I think I'd have general concerns about procurement. Thank you.
All right, Member Gould.
I just wanted to kind of back up what Member Byrd was saying. I think with the way this new section of the policy is written, whether we're talking about vendor or non-vendor. It has the safeguards because of the research and the compliance officer approval. So it kind of precludes things from just being willy-nilly. I've done it in my class. I don't really have any trend or research. I assume if somebody used something year over year, they could ask for that research to be done or show it to the compliance officer. And I'm getting nods, yes. So I think that solves it. I would also and I totally understand the safeguard for the staff. I totally get that. But I have to agree with some of the other comments that we are in a place right now where we don't need slow evolution. We need a combination of evolution, revolution. And if we can bring more partners with guardrails, reinforcing with guardrails, to the table to pilot innovative things with us, to really, engage research with us. And that could even get written into more contracts, whether it's, and maybe we even require an MOU for things that are donated. And that's part of it. That's another way to safeguard against this and have an inventory of everything that is coming into the system. But we want more engagement, not less engagement. We want more competition out there, not less competition. We want lifting up great things that are happening that our teachers are all excited about, not less. So if we can get closer to maybe what the law says, but have these safeguards, because we are a ginormous district, in place for review, I'm comfortable with that.
All right, thank you, Member Gould. Member Felder.
Hearing the words evolution, revolution reminds me of a 60s terminology. The revolution will not be televised. But listen, looking at an OCPS staff member's decision to participate in and to provide testimonies entirely voluntary. Thank you. But I'm just trying to understand, if they offer a testimony, how is it not going to be associated with OCPS? If they are teachers, if they're talking about their classroom and they teach in an OCPS school, are they going to just be in their living room or on the front yard somewhere, maybe I'm just trying to understand how it's not going to be attached to the fact. The reason why they have the testimony is because of the experience they had in their classroom. So help me understand that.
So what the policy for revision is proposing is you would identify them enough to know that they taught in an elementary school, a middle school, a high school. They utilized the product, but it wouldn't be in our school, so you wouldn't see an OCPS building, you wouldn't see an OCPS logo, you wouldn't identify a particular school. They're getting the experience with the product because they're employed by OCPS, but what the employee is not then going to do is go out and say, hi, my name is John, I work for Orange County Public Schools it's not going to be, I'm John, I'm an elementary school teacher, and I teach fourth grade, or whatever it is that I teach. And I utilize this product, and here's how it worked in my classroom. But you're not necessarily going to say it's OCPS.
So what would that commercial look like if they didn't say all those things?
It's going to look similar to what it would normally look like. It's going to say, I was in fourth grade, I utilized this, and I saw my kids doing well. We would have the sign off from our research management and strategy folks to say the data that, if they said, 60% of my kids improved in reading, that would be signed off on by our folks to make sure that's an accurate number.
Nobody knows whether or not it's from OCPS. It's just that they were a teacher using the product. Okay, thanks. I just needed to, I was really baffled by that, and I understand the precautions that we need to have, and I also, you guys probably haven't talked about it yet, but I also know the concern that teachers feel some kind of way when you tell them they have to use this in their classroom. I know I felt like that, but I just was it was just difficult for me to understand how a person could give a testimony of a product that was good and you not know that they were using it, but okay. Seems odd, but thank you.
Okay.
I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
needed to be clear. Thank you.
All right, Member Castellanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at this section, I agree with changes to number 1. And then where it says number 3, I agree with all of the criteria to be used in a testimonial or not used in a testimonial, all those restrictions. But I have a question about whether we should state that an employee may provide a testimonial for a vendor who is a charitable foundation organized under Section 501c3 IRS, whether it provides complimentary goods or not. I think maybe if we nix that sentence and instead say, if an OCPS employee's testimonial is approved by the ethics compliance officer or superintendent, it must follow the following criteria. So that we're not just talking about the type of vendor, but any vendor.
Say it again. It would start with if approved by?
If the testimonial is approved by the above ethics compliance officer or superintendent, the following criteria will be utilized for testimonial, and then the list. Instead of just making it for a nonprofit, we're talking about any vendor.
Okay. One of the things that reorganizing that paragraph does, though, is it puts the ethics compliance officer in the position of deciding what they could rule out the possibility of the endorsement not based on that, but based on something else, if we change the order of the language, because it puts them kind of in a supreme authoritative position. And then if they say, yes, these things apply, as opposed to the compliance officer is looking at these things to determine if it complies. So, but the other part of what you were saying, the other aspect of it would be that it would apply to a vendor that's offering something other than, doesn't have to be a charitable foundation, was the other half of it, right?
Right,
Okay.
regardless of how we receive the product. It still has to go through an approval process. And then once approved, they would follow these guidelines.
So here's where, I mean, if you have something you want to opine on that, and then I'll summarize where I think we are.
It does give discretion as to which kinds of testimonials would be approved or not. It would give the ethics compliance officer in the first instance the ability to say no, not based upon any objective criteria that's in there, but, you know, she would be looking at it and saying, I think this could cause let's say it's a vendor. I'm looking at this, this could cause a problem in a future procurement, depending on, especially if it's not a teacher who's doing it, but it's the director of curriculum who oversees the contract, right? So there is some discretion that would go to the ethics compliance officer in the first instance to make a threshold decision. And if she makes a threshold decision that she's not approving it, then the superintendent can take a look at it, make the threshold decision of whether or not she's approving it. And if neither one of them approve it, then it ends right then and there. That's the way that language would work. And, you know, that may lead us back to the same place that we have been. Now, with respect to vendors, you know, especially if they're going to be in a future procurement, that may not be the wrong result. However, it does give wide discretion to the ethics compliance officer and the superintendent.
And wide authority. So, I haven't said much throughout this. But I have been taking it all in. I think that if we're going to allow testimonial to be given, I think that the language in here that qualifies that is important. I would not want to have employees giving testimonials on things that are not from a charitable organization. And the reason is, going back to slippery slope, and maybe this is too much of an exaggeration, but if I'm a vendor and I am up for renewal and I feel like I will have a better advantage, maybe I've got this wrong, I don't know. I just hate the idea that it's a profit-making venture that our employees would be endorsing. But maybe I can't articulate why. I do think that I think most of the board is either okay with this language or wants to loosen it up. I have a feeling no matter what we do, we will be back here at some point to revisit it, because it's just not an easy subject, and unfortunately, most likely we will learn the hard way. No matter what we decide to do, we'll come back and say, wish I had tweaked it differently. So I do think we'll probably be back here. But we have to make a decision on how we're moving forward. So it's either this language, no language, or looser language. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good with the way the language is, and I'm fine with it being a charitable foundation. I think that's maybe a good place to start. But as I said earlier, when I said that, and I was talking, I want to be clear, I was talking about the whole policy. I wasn't just talking about this piece, because this piece, and I misspoke, the piece for the misinterpretation was our policy, what our policy stated, not what the law stated. And there was two different interpretations from our legal team versus their legal team on what our policy said, which is why we need to tweak it. If it's causing confusion between our charitable organizations, our vendors, or whoever it is, it means it needs to be tweaked and it needs to be defined. So that was what prompted me to ask the board to bring this forward. But there is a lot in this. This is our ethics. This is huge. And there is a lot of language in here that goes above and beyond what the state requires. And the previous board put it in place for, I'm sure, obvious reasons that they needed. So I would be happy if, as a board, we took a solid look at this and just pointed out the differences between our policy and what the state requires. Because I don't care who's sitting up with the board. I think that the state has really good, strong parameters, stronger for school board members than themselves on what we can and can't do. And I just think we should follow the law and not go beyond the law. So I would like us to review this policy, bring it back, and look at what else we can change.
So, John, from a procedure standpoint, I do think it would be to the board's benefit to have that in front of us so we can do that comparison. So we're at a work session right now. Does that mean we should have another work session as opposed to a rule development?
So Vivian Kokotis is going to love me. So
Yes.
what I would want to have is that side-by-side comparison sitting in front of you of this exceeds the law versus not. That's going to require a separate work session. That's going to require some time for us to go through. So, yeah, we can do it one of two ways. We could just move this language or whatever you all agree to forward, and then we can come back and get it through the process, or we can do the side-by-side comparison and do it all at one time. I'm at the board's pleasure.
And that's a really good point, because it seems like most everybody is okay with this language, and it moves the ball in the direction that I hear some of the board members doing. So it gets us closer. And it doesn't really delay anything, because the other process is going to be slower than this anyway.
Does
So,
it mean a side by side?
It means we'll see the side by side, but we can still move this forward.
That's what I want to see, the side by side.
Most everybody okay with that? Okay, let's do that, okay? Thanks,
got it.
John. That was
Got it.
helpful. Superintendent, you're up next.
Thank you. Just like one point of clarification, and I want to make sure that I heard it correctly. Are we adding the bullet about the data to support it or not? I thought that's what Member Byrd. No, that says no quantitative data would be included. I understood that we would have to have data to support the testimonial. So I just need clarification.
Is everybody clear on that? This says that you cannot use quantitative data when you are giving a testimonial, but this doesn't say that you can't give a testimonial unless there is quantitative. I know you just said that, but it makes sense to me that those are two different things. So does there need to be, to be honest with you, I wasn't even thinking about what you guys were thinking. I was thinking the charitable organization might be, I don't know, making some sort of donation to the school that has nothing to do with quantitative data because it's, right? Yeah, because, I don't know, it's stuff for the bake sale or, I don't know. And so in that case, there wouldn't be. So, but with,
Technically,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, technically, every time a principal gets over the PA or sends out an email going, please join your PTA, please support your PTA, that could be construed as a testimonial because he's trying to get them to join a nonprofit. I mean, they go on morning announcements and say.
Except for that, the PTA isn't a vendor, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, but it
Right.
is a testimonial.
But
Yes.
they are a nonprofit.
Yes, they are. And it's okay for anybody to do anything with a nonprofit. Where it becomes touchy is, well, maybe not anything. Where it becomes touchy is when they're a vendor. So, no? Okay, no. That's not where it becomes?
I'm just seeking clarification. There's lots of nonprofits that have programs. And so that's my question. If we're giving a testimonial, is the board saying that we include that there has to be data that supports that in order to be the testimonial? That's my question. No, I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
I think that if data is used, there's a guardrail in place to say how it can be used. And if it doesn't go through the district's research and management strategy director, then they don't use data. It says, no quantitative data will be included in any testimonial unless the data is approved by the district's research management and strategy director. So they would still be able to go over and say something wonderful about, like, this nonprofit has helped us with behavioral management, blah, blah, whatever it's there to do without citing data.
Member Ferrant.
Maybe can we put something in here then where they're not maybe speaking, they're speaking as their own person. I'm not speaking, I do work in a public school or I work in a charter school. I don't know. I guess this isn't for charter schools, but I work in a public school. I'm a 4th grade teacher. This is my own personal testimony, so I'm not speaking for our district as a whole, but for me personally, this is what I have seen. This product has been phenomenal for my kids in my classroom. So maybe something more like that where we make it where it has to be something for them where they can't say, this has been incredible for our whole school. I've seen it change in our school, but I know for me personally, this is what I've seen in my situation, where they're not maybe speaking to the, because I think the concern that I hear is that we don't want somebody saying, maybe speaking out of turn in the sense of like endorsing, making a full, like Orange County Public Schools endorses this product. Because even if it is for a book series, like you were saying, maybe the teacher has brought it in and it really has helped with their, her kids have really helped history come alive. And so that book series really helped her for her class. But maybe the teacher next door, it didn't really work for her and she doesn't love it. That's fine. So she's just maybe making it more personalized. So I don't know how we could word that, but maybe to say like, this is, anything you share would be your own personal feelings and not generalized as like to include the whole district, if that makes sense.
Okay. I think that's what this was trying to get to, but not as clearly as having a statement that clarifies it. Because I'm reading through this right now, and I can see where, absent that, it could be, somebody could say that, but they're still using their first name and not their last name and all that other. So I think it's a good idea to include it if nobody has an objection.
So
We're gonna
I
move
put it in the first bullet. An OCPS staff member's decision to participate and provide a testimony is entirely voluntary and shall be based solely on personal experience.
And shall not be presented as an endorsement of the district, by the district.
The only reason why,
Yeah.
because we don't identify the school, the district, the logo, or anything.
I know. I feel like that, I mean, that's what we were trying to do. Well,
Because you're not allowed to say you're a staff member, you're not allowed to mention OCPS at all.
well, I mean, OCPS staff members who provide testimonials will be identified by first name, position, and type of school. What am I missing here?
Can I'm so sorry. May I?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So are we saying that the nonprofit can say it's an OCPS
No.
teacher? But that's not listed here either.
Am I getting this wrong? Am I getting that bullet wrong? The bullet that says OCPS staff members who provide testimonials will be identified by first name, position, and type of school.
Just like elementary, but not actually the name of the elementary.
Right, right. So, but, okay.
So from that, I'll explain my thinking such as it is. If you're just identifying John, fourth grade teacher, elementary school, you don't know I work for OCPS.
Right, right.
So, but if you don't know I work for OCPS, de facto, you wouldn't think that the district, whatever it is giving it sign off. That was my thought.
Yeah.
But if we want to make it extra clear, we can say that it shall be based solely on personal experience. You know, if it's based solely on personal experience, to me, it wouldn't imply a district endorsement.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, Alicia, I'm sorry, Member Front. Actually, I think you had the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just a thought, can we maybe put something in here that says that anyone, any vendor or nonprofit, anyone who is creating the video would have to have some sort of disclaimer that says all testimonials are personal and may not reflect their employer or their school district at whole, something like that. And that way, so for instance, the video that I'm thinking that maybe has brought up some of this, where if they had said in the beginning, like there's a little disclaimer on the bottom, and then as people are sharing their testimony, it's like, I'm a fourth grade teacher, I'm so-and-so, and I have just had this incredible experience. This is what has happened. This organization has really helped my students. And then it just continues. And then no matter where they're at, it could be somebody from another state that's a fourth grade teacher. It could be somebody from our own local school. And that way it's makes it a little more generalized and maybe makes you guys feel a little less like somebody's going to make it out like it's Orange County Public Schools is giving an endorsement.
I don't have an issue with that bullet being included, that the vendor has to have a disclaimer that the video, that the views stated in the video are those of the teacher alone and don't represent the employer or any district that they work for.
That would be
I'll
perfect.
craft some language.
Yeah. That would be perfect.
Yep.
I think that, I'm one person, but I think that gets to the point without even mentioning OCPS, which is the goal here anyway, when you say, okay. Member Byrd, want to bring us home? Oh, I'm sorry. Superintendent, I apologize.
Maybe. So even if the employee does not reference OCPS, could the nonprofit reference OCPS, that they serviced Orange County Public Schools in
That-
their video? Let's say it's a video.
That's not the intent of the language here, if you would like.
This is just for employees.
Yeah, so this is an employee policy, not one that does that, but, you know, we can make that part of the process by which we say, you know, in order to get approval for the testimonial, the vendor will have to commit that they will not, you know, mention OCPS. I'll wordsmith it much better than I'm doing right here. If
Well,
that's what the board,
I don't know that, I don't know. I don't know, because I feel like there may be nonprofits that we do support or that we do have data for that that this may not be a problem once it goes through the approval, is what I'm trying to say. So, I
so
don't know.
the board may choose to lend its approval to the usage of OCPS name, image, and likeness by vote of the board, something like that.
For some nonprofits, I mean, obviously we wouldn't, I don't know.
If you guys don't give approval,
Now I'm feeling a
then
little confused.
Off? Is this a new thing, turning itself off? Okay. We don't know who might be using it. We've relinquished all control to who might be referencing us. The safer thing, I think, as we go down this path is to be a little more conservative. It doesn't take away the ability, if we feel that this is a great organization, we want to be attached to them, we're totally good with this, that I think what John was trying to say is the board would have that authority, but an individual employee or an individual vendor wouldn't have that authority. We could have a vendor that's doing a wonderful job for us in one area, but they have some product over here that their not-for-profit is promoting that goes totally against what we stand for and believe in, and we might not want our name associated with them at all. So I would suggest that we stay the course where we are. We can always loosen it up, and we haven't lost that ability. We just haven't completely relinquished the control. Superintendent, you're up next.
I was going to recommend that Mr. Palmerini, either we bring it back with the changes or we send it to the board to review before the final product, just because there's been a lot of conversation. I want to make sure we've captured
No, absolutely.
everything that
yeah.
they said.
Yes, so you'll draft the language because we don't have that in front of us. The board will see that language. We'll have a side-by-side comparison of what the statute says, and we'll come back for another work session.
Yeah.
That's the page we're on? All right, just
We can do that.
didn't want to leave. We've been at this a while. I didn't want to leave with confusion. Okay, with that, anything else, Superintendent, before we adjourn this meeting? All right.
Madam Chair,
I'm
as
sorry,
a reminder,
sir. Yes.
conference room E for
Okay,
our next meeting.
all right, thank you.
No problem.
Maybe Victor's looking out.